Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Comic Sleep podcast. Thank you for joining us for episode number 31. On today's podcast, Angela and I are going to be talking about the Umbrella Academy Season 1. This is a show on Netflix. Season 1 came out a couple of years ago now. I was aware of the comic book, but Angela suggested that we look into doing the TV show for an episode. And after watching a couple of episodes, she was right. There's some stuff there. It's an interesting TV show. It may be... I guess I don't want to give away too much about our conversation, but I think it maybe starts a little bit stronger than it finishes, but we'll get into all of our thoughts about Umbrella Academy Season 1, plot, characters, and just kind of what we think a little bit, kind of maybe where does this stack up a little bit in terms of some other Netflix things that we enjoy. So yeah, we're going to be having a big spoiler-filled discussion. This one goes a little bit long, so we actually don't have any one shots this week. We just kind of roll right into the end because it's a little bit of a longer conversation. But again, hope you enjoy this one about Umbrella Academy Season 1. You can find it now on Netflix, and we'll be back with our talk right after this short break. Bring these questions up or hit some of those at the end.
At the end, because you have to say the funny stuff at the end.
No, it's not funny, but I mean, that first one we can start off with right there at the top. There are those first two, I think. But we have like an outline here where we're just going to kind of run through what happens in each episode of Umbrella Academy Season 1. There's 10 episodes. And then there will be sort of like things to talk about related to like our larger thoughts about the season as a whole, I think, as we go through each of those, episodes. One other thing just off the top is we are going to refer to the character played by Elliot Page as Victor, just to reflect the real world changes that actor has gone through and where that character is now, right? So the character in season 1
might accidentally say the wrong name because we might see that slip. You have Vanya here.
Did I slip in some of them? I did my best.
And in the Umbrella, and the Wikipedia page doesn't have that switched over.
In the episode recaps I was looking at just to refresh, they didn't. But yeah, we're going to reflect where that character and that actor are at right now. So the character in season 1 has one name. We're going to use the name Victor, which is the name that they're going to be using in season 3, which will come out in a couple months, which is why we're doing this, right? We're sort of getting ready for season 3. So we're going to refer to as Elliot Page's character as Victor. Okay, so episode 1 is sort of a set the stage episode, right? We start with, as Angela says, her least favorite thing, which is, the quote is from the Notes app, "I hate shows/movies that start with people giving birth." Is it because birth is gross, or you just think it's a bad way to start a show?
It's just like so dumb. It's just, I feel like it's so, I mean, like I think giving birth is pretty gross, especially when you're like in that disgusting pool and then that girl just starts, like, if I was like in that pool when that happened, like I would sue the country.
So not a big fan of the New Testament. Not a big fan of the New Testament starting with the birth of Jesus.
That's how that starts?
No, there's a lot more, right? They have to like get to Bethlehem and there's like no room at the inn, but you know, basically, it's all leading up to him being born.
It's just gross. It's gross. And then like it's just like always just like screaming, and it's just like it's really jarring. Like I'm sitting down with like a snack and like some juice to like watch this, and then this girl's like bleeding in the pool, and it's really gross. Also, I kind of thought it was funny because like what if like the guy, because she was like flirting with the boy at the start, right?
They're like flirting.
And what if the boy was like, what if like they like didn't like take a human growth and development class, and he was like, did I do that?
Oh. Well, I thought that was like, I don't know. It's like because they're pretty young, but yeah, I don't know. There is like a world. No,
like, did I do that by just talking to her?
Yeah, absolutely right. There's a world where like that kind of, I don't know, like maybe that's kind of what they're implying, right? Like he's shocked. Like, how did this happen so immediately, right? Because no one else, I guess we don't know if like other people in the pool knew that she wasn't, he knows that he saw her when she wasn't pregnant, and then seconds later she was pregnant. But like, do other people around there know?
Probably,
yeah. But yeah, so she has, does it imply that the child that she has is one of the 7 in the show? Does it imply that?
think so, but if I had to guess, maybe close, because so that was in Russia.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was like Russian name or whatever.
Yep,
and
it
then
was in
Klaus,
Russia.
I think he had like a Russian accent in a flashback.
Okay.
But like also I only think he had an accent once. And also Allison had a British accent, but it was only once.
Yeah.
So I'm really confused.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We don't get a ton of we get a little bit of them as kids, but not a ton, right? It really is mostly dealing with them as adults, except for, we'll get to it, 5, who is still a kid. He's I don't know, is he supposed to be like 12 or 13?
13. He said I'm a 55-year-old man stuck in a 13-year-old's body.
Okay, but yeah, so yeah, the show starts, this woman who jumps into a pool, isn't pregnant, suddenly is pregnant and has a baby. And then, right, the show tells us that on, I forget what day, but like a very specific day, like 43 children around the world were born to women that were not pregnant when the day started. And they were like born at exactly the same time. And then this guy, I think his name is Reginald. Reginald is his first name, I think. Reginald Hargreaves. He finds 7 of them and forms what is called the Umbrella Academy, and these 7 kids turn out to have powers. It's not indicated whether or not the other, did he look at the other third? I don't know. Did he know that it's not really said if he knew that somehow knew that these 7 had powers, right? Did he find all of them and he only chose these 7?
It just said Reginald Hargreaves went to go offer the mothers money. He got 7, which it makes it sound like he offered other people money, but maybe people were just like, nah man, this is my baby now.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. So there could be 36 other people out there who potentially have powers that he wasn't able to get or whatever. But yeah, then it pretty quickly jumps to the present day where their dad, Reginald Hargreaves, has died and the kids are reconvening at what they call their mansion, or what they call the Umbrella Academy, for the first time in a while. Do you want to run down who our main characters are then?
All right. So Hargreaves, I'm reading from the Wikipedia because I think it's more succinct. Okay. Hargreaves calls the children by number 1 through 7, but Grace, which is their android mom, what the fuck is up with her, gives them names. Okay.
Oh,
so,
Grace.
Number 1,
okay. I didn't know she was the one who gave them names.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, did you not pay attention?
No, I did. I didn't catch. I guess I assumed that their parents gave them names and then he called them by their number, but they still had names because they were still born. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
Number 1, Luther. He shows up and he lives on the moon and he's just basically really strong and his body's very disproportionate. He's like a very, very established inverted triangle, but that's sort of explained later. Basically, the dad had to do a life-saving experiment on him and he kind of turned him into a gorilla. But not really a gorilla, just a hairy gorilla, only the torso though.
Yeah, the torso.
And the arms.
Yeah. What do we think about how Luther, before you see that he's super hairy, but when he's just a big guy in sweaters, what do we think about how that looks?
I texted you. I said that I thought he looked like the football player in my Chinese class.
I feel like football players' legs aren't so tiny, but I don't know. I guess I've not seen that many football players. But yeah, his legs are he has a normal person's legs, right? Yeah.
And a normal person's head.
And a normal person's head, which is, I don't know. I like it. I think it's goofy in the correct way where it's not distracting, but it's if you saw him on the street, you would be that is super odd, but you also wouldn't think it's the weirdest thing ever, but it would be very odd because it's just this dude has a huge chest and arms, but everything else is correctly proportioned. I don't know. I think it's good.
Okay. Number 2, Diego. His ability is he can throw knives really good. And he's goes around town kind of the little Robin Hood type guy. And he's that. I don't pass. He's boring. Allison is number 3. She can also fight, but her ability is she says, I heard a rumor you slapped yourself in the face, you would do it. Which brings me to my other question. If you had that ability, what would you do with it? What was the first thing you would rumor someone to do? And be honest.
I mean, I don't know. What thing?
Here's what I would do. Okay?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
It would involve kind of a lot of rumors, but I would rumor my way to figure out how to track down like the top 5 richest people in the world. And then I would say, I heard a rumor that you give me $1,000,000 every single month, all of them. So then I would just like be like, yeah, I just.
Because it's not like a wish. Like, you don't just get wishes granted, right? Because if you went to a bank and like said to the teller, I heard a rumor that you gave me $1 million, like other people would go to that person and be like, why'd you give them $1 million? And they'd be like, I don't know. And then they'd come track you down and be like,
right,
we want our money back. So it like it's like useful, but you have to use it on the right person, right? That's the kind of thing about it.
Yeah, I would have been like, hey, Jeff Bezos, I heard a rumor that you made a scholarship and I applied for it and then you gave it to me so it looks like I earned it and then you just like fund the rest of my life forever.
That would be, right? You like have to get in a room with like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or someone, and then you convince them, you tell them that you heard a rumor that they're gonna give all of their money away and use it to stop climate change, I think.
Oh, well, now you're making me sound selfish.
No, but I think you're of the right idea, right? Like you have to get in a room with the right people. Like it's not,
okay,
it doesn't just fix anything, but you got to get in a room with the right people. And so
yeah,
convincing rich people to do what you want, I think is fine.
Because like, so you'd be like, you'd find someone who you'd think would have a pretty good idea, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, I heard a rumor, you told me where Jeff Bezos lives. And then you get to the airport and you tell the TSA, I heard a rumor, you let me on this flight. And then you get to like the airport and you tell the Uber driver, I heard the rumor that you let me take this Uber for free. And then you get to the security guard outside Jeff Bezos' house and you say, I heard a rumor, you let me in. And like, you're in. I think that Allison has the strongest power. I know that you said 5, but like, if Allison used it more, she could have, Why did she ever, I heard a rumor, hurt their dad? Because like, if she didn't like, what if he's like, Allison's like, I heard a rumor, you just like, let us chill.
No. Here's the thing. Why did I heard a rumor on Pogo in the first episode, and it's like, I heard a rumor, you told us everything that happened. And
exactly.
So we'll talk about this, but this comes up, the reviewer, when again, I was using Vulture Reviews just to kind of remind myself because I finished this on Monday. But he makes a good point about because like, I don't know if we should get into like how Allison gets done in this season because I'm not super happy about it. I feel like we should wait till the end when she starts to actually have a plot, but we'll get there because I think there's like some really interesting stuff going on, and I don't know if the show. I think she is the one, and I don't know. Let me know if you disagree. I think she's like the show does her the worst, but. We can get to that later, maybe.
Moving on. Yes. Number 4, Klaus. My personal favorite because I like a quirky character. Can talk to the dead, as you'll find out later, can actually conjure the dead, but he's a drug addict because the dead will just like talk to him and they don't bother him when he's like high. So he is oftentimes high or on drugs. So yeah.
Well, I think they still do bother him, but he doesn't care, right? Because I don't think they. Because Ben is still there when he's high, right? But it just like doesn't matter. Only Ben. Okay.
Yeah. 5 does not have a name. I'm not sure why he doesn't have a name. That doesn't really make sense. Oh, actually, it does make. No, it doesn't really make sense.
Because I don't know. Maybe that's a season 2 thing. Maybe I'm not sure.
No, it never gets answered. I've already watched season 2.
Spoilers.
Sorry. You just name him. Call him Aiden. That's the actor's name.
Okay.
He can jump in time and space. He's the one. We'll get back to him later.
Sometimes it doesn't work though, which I like. I like that it's not. He can't just do it all the time.
Because like you got to give your characters flaws. For a good story.
He's also very smart. I don't know if that's related to his power, but he is.
I think that's smartest. Him being 58 years old.
But he can like do all those math equations. Like who taught him to do all that?
Oh,
I don't know. Anyways,
he's like at the start of the thing. He's been missing for a very long time.
Yes.
Next, number 6, Ben. Ben has tentacle arms that he can use to fight. Is dead now. Not sure how. He's always with Klaus. And Klaus is the only one that can see him. They talk. They can't touch. Or can they?
So, I don't know. I don't feel like the show did a great job explaining this. It's probably something that's more clear in the comics. But it's not that Ben, I put the tentacle arms because I think that's how the show represents it. But I guess technically, and maybe this is on the Wikipedia, he can conjure monsters and then use their ability is technically what it is. So he
That's
often
so much more cooler.
conjures a big like squid with huge tentacles, but he could conjure other things. I don't know if we see him conjure anything else though. I don't know. Again, I don't think the show explains that very well, or at least I didn't pick up on that.
Weird. Frick, sorry. I'm reading ahead. Okay, number 7. Victor. They told him that he has no powers, but he can at least play the violin. Also, weird choice for putting Phantom of the Opera music to the start. The end.
Is it the very start of the show that uses that?
No, when everyone's being introduced.
The Phantom of the Opera. Which is it? The
Angel. It's like
the
it's
Angel
like a
of-
medley.
okay.
Angel of Music, but also the like actual Phantom of the Opera. It was very strange.
Okay.
But yeah, he's like his character's like kind of like a little bit like mopey, kind of sad.
Yeah.
Doesn't really have expressions.
Yeah.
But then you realize that's because of the medication, so it's not their fault.
which maybe gets into kind of, I guess, what do you think about how this first episode sets up the relationships between the kids and then their relationship to the dad? Like, how do you think the show sets all of that stuff up in this first episode? Because that's really what I think it's like mostly set inside of the mansion, right? It's just kind of them interacting with each other because you get the sense they don't spend time together, right? Luther's been on the moon. Allison lives in Hollywood. Klaus, seems to be high most of the time. Diego has a weird like hideout under in the back of a boxing gym. Ben's dead. Five has been gone. Five's not actually there at the beginning of this episode. He comes in sort of halfway through. But how do you think it does like setting up their relationships or how they feel about their dad?
It was like fine. Because I watched it so long ago. When I was rewatching it, it was like I already know everything. But I think that it was like so obvious, like, oh, I don't like my dad, or like the dad, I don't like the dad. So I wasn't like really like blown away by that. And then like how they interact with each other is also kind of just like obvious, like, oh, Diego's jealous because he's number 2, Luther's arrogant because he's number 1. Allison and Luther have this weird thing that it's just weird. Klaus is just funny.
I didn't pick up on that the Allison Luther thing until I think it's like episode 6 that we get it, but
oh, that's just because it took you to episode 6.
I don't think I picked up on that until like episode 6.
Wow, you're just not as
No, I'm
perceptive
not.
as me.
There's a couple of things. I think the show has a lot to do balancing 6 characters, right? Plus setting up a world, like what kind of this world is and why do we care about what's going on with it? So I think it has a lot to do. But I think like, I don't know if you find this, but like, do you feel like a lot of Netflix shows, like they really need like 3 episodes in a way sometimes that like something on HBO or like Hulu doesn't? I don't know. Have you noticed that at all with like Netflix shows? Like it's good that you have all of them there because if you had to wait till the next week, you probably wouldn't because like the first episode isn't that good. Have you found that at all or not really?
I mean, now that you bring it up, yeah. I guess I don't watch a lot of HBO or anything else.
I don't know. That's something I feel like I've noticed with Netflix shows is like a lot of them like can be really high concept, right? You think about they do a lot of this like high concept stuff and they've been getting into comic book stuff, right? There's like Sweet Tooth, which is based on a comic book that came out last year. There's even like the Netflix shows the Marvel Netflix shows that came out a while ago, right? Like those first episodes are like kind of long and slow. They usually don't show I feel like in the Daredevil one, I don't even know if they showed the character like in the uniform in that first episode, right? And they're like counting on you. Oh, episode 2 is going to start in 10 seconds. So like episode 1 needs to do a lot of work, but it doesn't need to do like everything because you're probably just going to watch episode 2 because it's going to start immediately. And so while I think this episode's like, it's good, right? It sets a lot of stuff up. I think you're right. Like some of those things like, oh, Diego's jealous and the dad didn't love Luther enough and Victor's the weird outcast one. And, Klaus is like the lovable weirdo and all of that is pretty like standard, right? There's nothing kind of super interesting in that first episode is in terms of like who the characters are. I think it gets a lot better, but yeah, I think some of that is like pretty straightforward in terms of their relationships. The only thing, so then the big thing at the end of episode 1, we'll move on to episode 2. Big thing at the end of episode 1 is 5 does show back up. He comes from the future. Again, he's like comes back as a 13-year-old boy when are they all in their like late 20s? Is that what we're supposed to think?
Yeah, I guess.
They're like late 20s, early 30s. But he's a 13-year-old boy because he's been living in the future and he's coming back to warn them. Specifically, he tells Victor the world is going to end in 8 days and we have to do something to stop it. That kind of leads us into episode 2. Do you want to give us the recap for episode 2 a little bit, or?
Yes. Okay. Victor thinks Five's mind has been corrupted by time travel and that the world will not really end. Agents Cha-Cha and Hazel arrive at a motel and begin to track their target, which is 5. Luther learns that Diego had a boxing match at the time of their father's death, which rules him out as a suspect because Luther thinks that one of them killed the dad. Victor meets her latest violin student, Leonard, red flag, partly assisted by name? Klaus. Yeah, this is Leonard Peabody. That's obviously a made-up name. Leonard Peabody. Like, this is 2019. Who's naming their kid? Whatever. Partly assisted by Klaus, number 5 tries to find out the origin of a prosthetic eye that he found in the future, knowing that its owner will soon destroy the world. The brothers learn, however, that the eye has yet to be manufactured in the present. 5 visits a department store to see Dolores, which is a store mannequin who was his companion over the 30 years he was gone, and is attacked by Cha-Cha and Hazel. Diego's former friend/lover, Detective Eudora Patch, investigates the deaths at the donut shop. Oh, we didn't talk about the donut shop. But our only witness has already been interrogated by Diego, and Allison, number 3, watches old surveillance videos of her childhood to cheer herself up, but finds a disturbing tape of her father. And also it is revealed that in the apocalyptic future, 5 found his siblings dead and removes the prosthetic eye from Luther's clutched hand. Yeah. So I guess the donut shop is someplace we'll come back to. There's a couple like very I don't know, you could call them like stylized, highly choreographed, but there's a couple big fight scenes, especially in these early episodes set to, I was looking up, like most of them are like 80s-ish pop songs, like 70s, 80s-ish, like not like super famous pop songs, but like they are pop songs. And one of those happens in the first episode where these like agents come, 5 is sitting in the diner. Agents, right? They're all dressed in black. They have machine guns. They come looking for him. He escapes. Somehow he gets them all to shoot themselves. Right, I think he like jumps into the middle. He gets them to shoot themselves, gets away, and then Hazel and Cha-Cha are these 2 assassins who come looking for him because these like other agents, right, that we see in episode 1, because they weren't able to get the job done. So they send like other more qualified people. What do we think about Hazel and Cha-Cha? What's up with their masks?
I guess I just took that as like weird comic booky, like a weird like maybe like I guess I'm gonna say this a lot, but like I'm interested to see how a lot of this plays out in the comic book. I don't know if they do that in the comic book. Maybe it's just, you're saying because no one would recognize them because they aren't from any time period, right? Is that like they don't need the masks?
I just thought it looked dumb. That's all. Also, I just thought it was funny how like Hazel's just like complaining about management, and I was like, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, he starts off talking about his like health insurance is getting cut and they're not getting paid as much anymore, right? There's all this like bureaucratic like middle management stuff they have to deal with.
Yeah, and it was like kind of making me wonder because Gerard Way was like the dude who like wrote the stories, and I don't really know a lot about him, but I'm pretty sure he's like I don't know, when you Google him you get a "Did you mean emo singers?"
He was type. I think he was the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. Is that correct? Yeah. He's like.
But I'm just wondering, is this just like weird Gerard Way stuff? I don't know enough about him to like make that claim, but like.
Yeah, I haven't read enough of his stuff to know. I want to save this point a little bit for episode 6, because I think that's when we really get to see the organization that Hazel and Cha-Cha work for and what it looks like. And did you watch Loki? Did you ever end up watching
No.
Loki? Okay. Well, there's like a thing I want to get into a little bit about that. There's like this trope that comes up with their organization, and I think we'll come back to that in a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if it has anything to do with like Gerard Ways. I just remember I was going to St. Matthias, so I was in.
So you weren't allowed to listen to that music, or they told you were going to go
No,
to
there
hell?
was this one girl in class who was obsessed with My Chemical Romance. I can't remember her name, but she was like like kids, like she would wear like bracelets and she had it on her notebooks and everything. She was like super obsessed. So I think that was like 5th and 6th grade.
Did she bark at people?
No, I don't remember that. She was like pretty normal otherwise, right? Because you had to like wear a uniform, right? So she couldn't, she couldn't express herself too much, and she didn't have like black hair or anything.
Because at like my school, I remember because like as public school, and like I just remember the kids that like My Chemical Romance were all kind of weird, except for Bijou because she's my friend and she's cool, but like everyone else weird.
But yeah, so I don't know enough about them, or he is like now a full-time comic book writer, and I haven't read enough of his stuff to know if that's one of his like themes, but
his aesthetic.
Yeah, that's episode 2. I don't know. Do you, if you can think back to the first time you watch it, do you get bad vibes off of Leonard immediately? Did you be like, this guy's, or because I was like, there was a second there I was like, oh, maybe Victor's gonna have this nice relationship and Victor's maybe gonna like separate from the rest of them, right? I guess I don't. Yeah. I wasn't convinced immediately Leonard was a bad guy.
Yeah, I was just like, I just thought he was like weird, but in like a quirky like, wow, Victor, you found your people type thing, where like you can be like weird and like, because also this was like before I like figured out, or he was like taking medication or whatever, so I was like, you can be sullen with him. I thought he was like weird, but I didn't think anything of it.
Do you ever look at an actor and like it's like, oh, they definitely cast you because you have a weird kind of looking face? I don't know. It's like like the actor look.
I'd have to look at him again.
The actor has a kind of a weird looking face, and it's like, but you actually have to like, that's actually what you look like. I don't know what he looks like when he's smiling and not being weird and menacing.
Just like someone with like not very great social.
Not even that he's like unattractive. There's just
skills.
There's just something off. And again, maybe that's just him doing a really good job. Like he plays it pretty well.
I think if they wanted him to look more like, because yeah, I do think his look kind of does give it away of just how like ordinary and like not just kind of like weird he looks. They should have cast like Joe from You or something, or whatever that dude's name is.
The main character?
Joel Goldberg. Yeah, Joe.
Oh, you mean like someone who's like kind of attractive?
Yeah.
Oh, got
like,
it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. They do give it away a little bit, with the way he looks.
Yeah, because it's just like, I guess like maybe it's like, it's kind of like maybe the sad thing about TV, but it's like if someone's not like attractive, they're probably not going to be a good guy. So they should fix that.
Yeah. All right. So like you were saying, end of episode 3, Allison sees some
Episode 2,
Allison sees some disturbing footage that indicates that maybe Mom was there or somehow involved in killing Hargreaves. And so that's kind of where we start episode 3, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What was that one then?
After Allison shows Luther the videotape of what looks like Grace, the siblings' android mother, serving poison tea to their father, the two of them ask the mother about the incident, but Grace claims to not like remember anything about it. So the siblings suspect that she's hiding something. Victor is struggling with his violin skill, and he and Leonard get to know each other better. Number 5 starts an observation at the manufacturer of the prosthetic eye. There's like a lot of people to keep track of.
Yeah.
Agnes, which is a waitress at the donut cafe, describes the umbrella tattoo of number 5 to Cha-Cha and Hazel, leading them to the Hargreaves house. And then Allison and Luther gather the rest of their siblings to watch the footage. Diego reveals that he took the monocle from Grace after the funeral and threw it away. And then the siblings are like arguing about whether or not to turn Grace off because she's a robot. Hazel and Cha-Cha break into the Hargreaves house and attack Luther, Diego, Allison, and Victor, but flee and kidnap Klaus from the siblings fight back.
This is where
Diego
Klaus
finally
is
turns
like,
off Grace.
He's sort of like
in the bathroom.
Isn't he like conveniently walking through hallways where like people aren't shooting at each other, right? Is that He has,
Yeah,
does he have
yeah,
like
yeah.
headphones on? It's one of those types of scenes, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then you said they end up, they don't kill anyone, but they kidnap Klaus at the end, right? Is that the end of it?
Right. Yeah. And then Diego turns off Grace because she's like showing signs of malfunction.
Yes. He blames, I think this is episode 4, but beginning of episode 4.
He lets Hazel and Cha-Cha take the blame.
Yeah, he
for it.
blames them.
I don't like Diego. He's my least favorite.
Why is that?
Because in season 2 he's kind of annoying too. He's just like he thinks he's like the shit, and like he's not. Like, you can throw knives, big deal.
Can he throw anything and make it curve, or is it just the knives and make it curve, right? Isn't that the thing? Actually, he can like bend thing, like he can curve something to go where it wants, but he chooses to do knives. Is that the...
But I was like, also, like, that's also just like a really lame talent compared to everyone else. Because like, I feel like a lot of people could just like learn how to do that. This is pretty good.
I mean, I guess this is why I say, right? Like, none of them are Victor before. Again, we haven't gotten to this episode technically yet, but Victor is just really strong, and then he gets stronger because his dad gives him this serum to keep him alive when he almost dies. And again, it makes his upper body.
That's not Victor. That's Luther.
Luther is just really strong, right? Like, that's it. He's really strong. But at the end of episode 3, at that fight, right? Like, he's not stronger than Hazel, right? Like, Hazel can go toe to toe with him, kind of, right? They both throw each other around, which, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, Luther, not great. Allison, again, has this really good power, doesn't want to use it. We'll talk about that in a bit. Diego can throw the knives. Klaus seems pretty, not useless, but his power seems unhelpful in these types of situations until later in the season. And then, Victor at this point doesn't seem to have any powers, right? So, you know, like 5 can sort of teleport time and space, and then throwing the knives after that seems pretty useful if you're just got like a strong guy and a guy who can see dead people at this point. It's not the most exciting thing, but it is like effective, right? Getting stabbed with a knife will take you out. I don't know.
I guess. It's just like...
Is this also the episode where it gets into the book that Victor wrote a little bit, right? I think that's this episode.
A little bit. It's like always, they're always kind of talking about it.
Yeah, so that was one of your questions, right?
I was just like so confused about why everyone was so upset. Like, they were like is it just because it felt like it was an invasion of privacy? Or like, I don't know. I feel like they just like pushed it like a little bit too much. Because like, I get that they were trying to show that like Victor is like set apart from like the other siblings, and like, but like, I don't know. It was just also weird because like throughout the whole season, I was like, do they even like him, or like, do they even view him as like one of their siblings? Like, I was just very confused.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they have
because like at the start, Diego's like to Victor, you shouldn't have come, blah blah blah, and like they're all just like kind of like not very nice to Victor. And then at the like end, when spoiler alert, when Luther locks him in the thing, then they're like, but
I don't know. I wonder. I don't,
because like the only person that I think was trying really was Allison. And then like some sort of 5, but 5 was gone for so long, and he's kind of like not really on the same, him and Victor are not on the same brainwave, so like they would have
there's that moment, right? Because the first person that 5 tells that the world is going to end is Victor at the end of episode 1, right? But as soon as Victor's like, I'm not sure if I believe you, right? 5 is not really into it, right? And I think they
don't really interact ever again.
Right? Like, I think the I'm going to say person, but I think the person that 5 ends up interacting with the most is probably the mannequin. I forget what he calls her. Dolores. And then the handler who will come up later, right? I think 5 doesn't seem particularly interested in creating a relationship with anybody, right? He's too smart for all of this the whole time. I think he definitely looks down, right? In the same way Diego looks down on, they all don't really like each other, right? You know, Diego doesn't like Luther because Luther's number 1. Victor doesn't have powers, so Diego doesn't think they're useful, right? 5 is this weird little kid, right, that they can't they, you know, they don't know who to, like, if they can trust or believe him. You know, they all are very suspect of Klaus because Klaus just seems like I mean, he is a drug addict, but they're also not sympathetic or interested in helping him at all.
Which is like rude.
Yeah. Like, so they don't like each other.
Except for Luther and Allison.
Except for Luther and Allison. But I don't know. I don't know if they ever say, I think someone says, I forget who, I think it might be Allison who says it explicitly, like, you wrote that they feel like they were exploited, right? I think Allison says something like, you exploited us, right? And I don't know if we're supposed to think about it in the way that, like, every family has problems and you don't want to feel like your family's problems were like a tool for someone else to get famous. She didn't end up getting famous, right? We see all of those book readings where no one came, you know, and then, like, I think she asked Pogo at the end of episode 1 or something, like, did Dad ever read the book? And I think Pogo, I'm sure he says no, right? He says not to my knowledge, right? So, like, no one ever cared, but, like, it could be as simple as, like, they don't want their business out there, right? Because there was, like, enough bad stuff going on. I don't know.
I get that, but also it's just like, I feel like they were holding on to it too much. Or maybe it's just because they probably, like, haven't seen each other, so it was all, like, bottled up or whatever. But then also, I feel like they weren't very sympathetic to Victor either.
But it could also be the thing where Victor wasn't on missions with them, right? Victor was very isolated and so had a different perspective than all of them. And, like, Victor, I don't get the sense that Victor, like, talked to them and included what they had to say in the book, right? It was very much what I think was going on with this, as someone who lived outside of was not a core member of the Umbrella Academy, right? Doesn't have the tattoo, has powers, again, as we'll see later, but, like, isn't included with the rest of the family, right? So maybe they think it's like a very one-sided thing. It's like, you're actually not the person who can tell this story in a complete way.
I guess, like, I get why they're, like, upset, but I feel like if they want to show that, like, Victor is so set apart from the family, I feel like they should have done more than just have it be about, like, a book, I guess. Yeah,
and maybe it would even be different if it was, like, a book that was actually successful, you know? Because I think we're supposed to understand that it's not a successful book. But we're not to speed us along, Edge.
Oh yeah, I know. I was like, should this be a 2-part podcast?
Let's keep going. That was episode 3. And so why don't you tell us what happens in episode 4?
7 years ago, Hargreaves sends Luther on a mission that goes severely wrong. To save his life, Hargreaves injects Luther with a serum that also transforms his body into that of an ape. In the present, Allison and Luther find the deactivated Grace and assume that the hitman shut her off. Leonard and Victor bond and agree to go out to dinner. Meanwhile, Cha-Cha and Hazel torture Klaus to get information out of 5. Very funny. When they begin to destroy Klaus' drugs, he gives up information, and after sobering up, he begins to see their dead victims. 5 threatens the man from Meritech to get more information about the prosthetic eye. Cha-Cha and Hazel, now aware of 5's investigation, go to the lab instead of a flame. Diego and Luther find 5 passed out drunk. Patch goes to the motel to search for the 2 hitmen and frees Klaus, but gets killed by Cha-Cha. Klaus escapes through the vents with his briefcase. He opens up the briefcase and time travels. I felt so bad for Klaus, especially when he comes back in episode 5.
Felt bad.
That's also why,
for him. Why?
Because he, went through, a war and he had to just come back. Also, he does get, kidnapped and, that whole thing that happened before that.
Let's make this one. Let's we'll try to move a little bit quicker, although I am enjoying this. So this is, I think in episode 3, right, we saw a little bit, I think that is where we saw, we saw the sort of flashbacks, Victor writing the book. We saw the first hints at why Allison doesn't seem to use her powers anymore. I forget exactly how it shows that, right? But she has this doubt about are the things that she's accomplished things that she's done, or is it because she has manipulated people? And then we also see Victor, can't keep these characters straight. We also see Diego used to have a stutter, right? And his shutting, it's kind of poignant that he shuts down Mom because Mom helped him get over his stutter. And then episode 4 is, I think that's when we see, right at the beginning is when we see Luther on the moon. Or no, sorry, we see Luther like how he on a mission, right? Yeah, he uses the serum to turn him big, and then the dad sends him to the moon as a way to get rid of him, right? That's what we figure out, that it's a way to get rid of him, which Luther won't figure out till later, but it also like doesn't. Luther should maybe hate their dad the most, but again, it is like the most loyal, right? Which is, you know, the weird, like kind of fucked up way that happens sometimes, is still sort of searching for their dad's like affection or a affirmation, right? Even after he's gone, right? By like being the one who's like, well, did you, like, figuring in the first episode, it's like, oh, who killed him, right? He's a suspect, right? Why is the monocle gone? And I think in episode 3, Diego's like, I took it because I hated him and I threw it in the river, and you know. But this is the one where so we start to see Klaus's character changing a little bit, right? Because when he is kidnapped by Cha-Cha and Hazel, yeah, he starts to sober up a little bit, right? He doesn't have access to drug. He starts to sober up, and these ghosts, right? We sort of see that when he's sober, right, is he has to sort of figure out how to deal with the ghosts that he can see, right? He can't ignore them. And I don't know, this is like one of the questions I have it here a few times is like, you know, is this show kind of like weird enough, right? Because it is this comic book, right? Where like kind of anything can happen in comic books. And so this weird thing starts happening where Klaus starts seeing the ghosts of the people that Hazel and Cha-Cha have killed, and then starts like using that against him. Like, I think that's like funny and interesting, but also a way to do like character growth in a certain way, right? Because Ben is sort of there helping him. I don't know. I liked that scene. I like, again, and also like getting to spend time with Klaus, right? Because
he's the most interesting.
I think he is the most interesting. But yeah, so he's able to kind of manipulate them. At the end of the episode, he sends them to burn. I think, did you say this in the recap? He sends them to burn down the place that 5 is looking at, because that's where the eye was manufactured.
Yeah, because he's like talking about the eye.
So they go burn it down. Klaus is able to escape, and then Diego's like the detective that Diego sort of, they used to have a relationship. They still like each other. She shows up, rescues Klaus, but is killed in the process by Cha-Cha. And then when Diego finds her, leaves prints at the crime, evidence of himself being there at the crime scene, which is going to catch up with him later. All right. Yeah. Why don't you tell us what happened in episode 5 then?
A flashback shows number 5's life in the apocalyptic future. He is eventually approached by the handler representing an organization called the Commission. She offers him a job. He works some time for them by killing people throughout history until he finds a way to return to the present day. Allison suspects that Leonard is hiding something and makes inquiries, but Victor dismisses her concerns and becomes angry with her. Victor stops taking his pills. When he auditions for the first chair in his orchestra, he gets it, but at the same time, a mysterious power within her appears. Klaus destroys the briefcase after returning from his time travel. He fought in the Vietnam War and lost someone close to him and is heavily traumatized. That was super sad. Luther, number 5, trick the hitman into setting up a meeting with the handler in exchange for a different briefcase. She offers number 5 a new job, and he accepts under the condition that his family survives. Victor gets first chair and tells Leonard, unbeknownst to him, Leonard killed the former first chair violinist. Pogo reactivates Grace and asks her to keep a secret from the kids.
Victor plays for this orchestra and hasn't progressed at all in the multiple years that he's been there, and the first chairperson's like, why are you staying here if you can't seem to make any progress?
But it was just like so weird how she said that to him, because I mean, who
it's aggressive for sure
in real life would be that like rude about it? I feel like, and I mean, like, I guess I should have talking about what happened in real life, because like whatever, but like I just was like, wow, okay.
It's aggressive for sure.
I feel like it would have been more believable if like the conductor operator dude was like, hey Victor, that would have made more sense.
I never did like band or music or anything. You did?
Orchestra.
Isn't that how, like, I can imagine it being like pretty competitive, right? And imagine if you were like a senior, but you were still stuck at like first chair, right? You didn't sort of, you know, maybe you like don't make it as a freshman, you make it as a sophomore, but you're like third chair, right? Because I think Victor's third chair. And then you sort of expect to move up with each year, and then but then as a senior, like you don't, right? Or you get like stuck somewhere, and it's like I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about music, right? Because the first chair says some to her, like, there's a certain point at which you can practice as much as you want, but like you have to have something else, which I don't know if that's true because I can't play any instruments. So, but what did you, and we're going to kind of get into this with 6 and 7 because those episodes are kind of a pair with each other. But like, was there part of you that was like, I wish we got a whole episode of Klaus in Vietnam instead of just like, I think we get like 10 or 15 minutes of flashback.
Yeah, in the sixth episode.
And because 6 is kind of its own thing, and we'll talk about what it is. But there was part of me that's like, if you have 10 episodes, like you can give us a whole episode about what Klaus went through, right? About like, because that would be interesting. Like this time traveling guy who is trying to get sober in Vietnam in the 60s. Like there's like a huge thing about soldiers who went over to Vietnam and got really addicted to drugs. Like that's kind of, that's I forget what Denzel Washington movie that's sort of a plot line in, but it's like set during the Vietnam War. And part of it is that he uses the American military, like planes that they bring back dead soldiers on. He uses that to smuggle drugs back from Vietnam. Right. So like there was a huge drug problem with the soldiers over there, but also like Klaus sort of figuring out his sexuality and identity and stuff. And like, I don't know, I wanted a whole episode of that because this,
or at least like more in the aftermath.
What do you mean the aftermath?
Like when he comes back, because I feel like it's kind of like 5 is like, oh yeah bro, that sucks, and then like we kind of see him being like, we see how he's like different or whatever, but like no one's really, just everyone's like, oh, Klaus again, and like no one's like checking on him or anything. I think it would have been more interesting to see like what it was like for him after he's back a little bit more, other than just him going to like that bar and whatever.
Yeah, he goes to a bar for veterans. He goes to a VFW hall. But I feel like it would be weird if they suddenly started checking up on him, right? Because they haven't cared at all up to this point, right? So something would have had to change. I don't know. Yeah, more time with Klaus, though. I think we both agree on that. More Klaus. All right, you want to give us...
You get some more Klaus in season 2, just saying.
Do you want to kind of give us 6 and 7 at the same time, because these episodes are kind of like a duo a little bit?
All right, so 6 is like, it's so, I hate it. I hate when what happens like this, just because like my brain is like, I kind of
love this. Okay,
like I like it because it's interesting, but like I hate it because it's just like, but I got invested in this timeline and now you're taking it away from me. Cha-Cha sent orders to terminate Hazel, and Handler takes 5 to the commission headquarters. Luther informs the academy about the impending apocalypse, but fails to inspire this group to fight. Victor is angry about being excluded, and she knowingly causes a rainstorm and bends several street lamps in her with his emerging powers. Klaus asks Diego to help him sober up, hoping to see Dave's ghost before the world ends. Dave is the person who died in Vietnam with him. Luther feels betrayed when he discovers his moon research was pointless. Ugh, so annoying. Diego is shocked to discover that Grace has been reactivated. Luther and Allison confess their romantic feelings. 5 intercepts orders to protect a man named Harold Jenkins and send orders to Cha-Cha and Hazel telling them to kill each other. Victor discovers his father's notebook at Leonard's house, reads it, and learns that his father knew about his powers and suppressed them. 5 steals a time-traveling briefcase and flees the commission. He arrives at the beginning of the episode, altering the timeline, rallying his siblings to stop the apocalypse, and basically making this whole thing happen pointless because it never happened.
Yeah, so right, this day, the name of this episode is The Day That Wasn't, and then the name of that next episode is The Day That Was. So yeah, this timeline didn't happen. Although certain things play out the same in the next, right? The Hazel Cha-Cha thing plays out the same.
Well, then like you sort of get the other side of it.
Yeah, you get the other side of it. Yeah.
Okay. The Day That Was. Harold Jenkins is born from Harold Jenkins is like introduced, born from a normal pregnancy, but his mother dies in labor. He is born on the same day as the Umbrella Academy, so he believes that he's like them. And then the flashback, Reginald's like, nah bro, there's nothing special about you. But
like in a very public and embarrassing way, right? Because it happens in front of a lot of people, yeah.
Harold has a abusive and alcoholic father and kills him and is sentenced to 12 years in prison. But Harold is actually Leonard Peabody, because that's a fake-ass name. 5 reveals that they must locate Harold to stop him from causing the apocalypse. Diego, Allison, and 5 break into Leonard's house. Diego learns that he's a prime suspect for Detective Patch's murder. Allison recognizes Harold as Leonard from the police file. They break into Leonard's house, discovering destroyed Umbrella Academy memorabilia, but their hunt is cut short because Five passes out from a shrapnel wound. Luther becomes depressed. This was so stupid. I just hate Luther. Upon learning the truth about his mission to the moon, he goes on to a rave where he becomes intoxicated. Klaus follows him, is knocked unconscious in a fight. He sees Reginald, who tells him that Klaus has not fully seen the potential of his powers and that he has orchestrated his own death in order to bring the 6 children together. Hazel receives orders to kill Chacha, but instead of he incapacitates her. Leonard and Victor are harassed by a tree of thugs. They beat up Leonard, causing Victor's powers to burst, killing the 2 of them. Leonard recovers in the hospital, having lost his right eye, while Allison looks for Vanya. Diego is arrested.
Okay. A lot in here. Yeah, we get this opening with Leonard where we see just like what a horrible, right? If you don't understand it to the point where like how bad he is to his kids, like he's horrible to Leonard, right? Like you get it, but it's, and then it's also that very thing, like, right, you create your own villains. It's also like doing that thing, right, where like their dad was such a bad guy that I don't know if we're supposed to think like he set this in motion, right? Like if that didn't happen, would Leonard not have come back, right, as an adult to try to like, undo them? Is this like all the dad's fault in the end? Do you feel like it's doing that at all, or is this just an example of like the dad's super mean?
I think it's just an example of the dad being mean.
And then, so I think one thing we didn't say just in episode 5 is that we see when we were talking about the orchestra and the first chair thing, the woman who is the first chair, she like disappears. And then at the end of episode 5, so they don't say it immediately. And I didn't actually pick this up until I read the recap, because Victor and Allison are sort of having this little relationship, right? And they're talking about Victor at the orchestra. I thought Allison had told the first chair woman to be like, you don't want to play the violin anymore, and that's why she doesn't showed up. But that's not the case. I didn't pick up on this. You see a dead body, right? Because at the end of the episode, it sort of pans around to each character and what they're doing. You see Leonard and Victor at Leonard's house, and then it goes up to the attic where you see a dead body, which we're supposed to know is the first chair orchestra person. So Leonard has killed her so that Victor can advance in the orchestra. And then you also see Hargreaves's journal, which Klaus threw away at the beginning of, or in episode 1 or 2, because he was stealing stuff from the house so he could sell it to go get high. So there is a sense in which, and I don't think that this series like does this. I was worried, but there's a sense in which like, oh, if Klaus hadn't been doing that to get high, like this wouldn't have happened. And I was like worried it would go there and they would like blame all this stuff on him, when like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, that's an easy place to blame everything, when there's like a million other things that also led to this, but they don't really go there. But yeah, Klaus threw that journal away. Leonard steals it out of the dumpster, and he figures out what's going on with Victor, and that he can sort of unleash her powers if he is able to manipulate her. One thing, so this is kind of getting to something I want to talk about before. We were talking about like Hazel complaining about the bureaucracy, and is this like a thing that Gerard Way does? Again, I don't know. If you watch Loki, and again, I know you haven't seen it, but they also have like an agency that controls time travel, very similar to the Commission. And it's like the same thing, right? It's like this boring late 60s, they have like old computers, they have typewriters, most things are done with like paper and pencil. There's like files, right? It's like these very boring office jobs with like people sitting at desks and silent, right? Like the Loki time agency, it's called the Time Variant Authority, looks very, very similar to the way that the Commission, right? Everything's very like mechanical and ordered and structured. And I don't know, like this Loki obviously like came out later. I don't know what inspirations they were drawing from for that, but I think it's like interesting to think about like why, and I would imagine, if I don't know other shows that do this, right, but I imagine this is sort of as kind of a trope, like, if we think of the timeline, right, time is sort of discussed in this thing as where like it's very like chaotic, right, and there's like it's going a certain way, but the reason it's like going a certain way is it because it has to be maintained through like order, right? And there are people who think they know what is right? They think they know what the right order of time is, and there are casualties along the way to like maintaining that order, right? This is something that happens in this show, right? You see they talk about a little bit about all of the people, right? 5 brings it up a lot about all the peoples he's killed, right? To have to maintain the timeline. Certain people have had to die, right? And Hazel and Cha-Cha are examples of these hitmen. That is what 5 used to do, right? You have to kill people to maintain the timeline, right? Very similar thing happens in Loki. And I haven't thought about this a ton, right? So I don't have like a thesis on it, but like, yeah, there's something there about like why we think about time, or why these shows are showing time as something that has to be like managed and maintained, right? That it's going some definite place that these people are working to maintain, and it has this very stereotypical look to it, right? It's this like boring office work. I don't know. Did you have any thoughts about that? Did you have any thoughts about like the way they showed the time that 5 was working at the commission?
No, but it kind of reminded me of like A Series of Unfortunate Events, the TV show on Netflix. It kind of had like the same like vibe where it was like
absolutely
emphasized how ordinary and boring it was. It was like, oh
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. There's just a weird like similarity I noticed, but can't like I don't know if anything we can definitively say. Maybe if we get more of the commission in like the second season, there's some more time to talk about that. So we have 2 things before we move on from this one. What do you think about like what did you think about Luther at the rave with I thought it was kind of funny when the woman came up to him and was like, I love the furries, right? When she doesn't know that he's what did you think about that? I thought that was kind of fun.
Nah. I just don't like Luther, so I was just like, whatever.
Okay. And then so the last thing, and this kind of leads us into the next episode, is in that flashback, right? Klaus, we're supposed to understand he like dies for a little bit, right? Is that when it goes all black and white, he's dead for a little bit? So this is the first time he's able to conjure their dad, right? They actually ask him earlier, like, if you see dead people, why can't you just ask dad what happened? And Klaus is like, I've been trying and I can't. So he dies for a little bit. He sees their dad. Their dad tells them, I killed myself in order to bring you guys together to do this thing. Again, the recaps I was reading indicated that the dad knew the apocalypse was coming, which is why he died at this moment.
That's so stupid.
I don't know if the show communicates that. I was like, I don't know if that's true. Why do you say that? That would be so convenient, right? Or is that what you mean?
Well, no, that he's like, he knew when the world was ending, so he decides to only give them a week to stop it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? That doesn't, yeah, absolutely, right? But he also he couldn't have known that 5 was, because they wouldn't have been able to do anything if 5 didn't come back, right? Like, because again, their powers aren't like super useful. So I don't know if that's something maybe they'll get at in like season 2 or season 3. Did the dad know what was actually happening? But he killed himself so that they would come back together, which leads us into episode 8.
Episode 8. Oh my gosh, this is so long. Unable to find Victor, Allison accompanies a police officer investigating the attack on Leonard and Victor under the guise that she is researching for an acting role. Leonard and Victor leave the hospital. They learn that the third assailant... What?
Just the way you're reading it is good.
Survived.
It's very dry.
Allison and the other officer question the assailant and learn that Leonard paid the thugs to attack him. Hazel runs away with Agnes, going on a trip she always wanted. Arriving at their first stop, he leaves her to take care of an issue but promises to return. Cha-Cha goes to Agnes's donut shop, discovers... I don't really care about this. Leonard and Victor go to the woods to train Victor to develop his abilities, which grow stronger as he flashes back to his childhood training with Reginald. Reginald feared his powers were too great, so he isolated him and began medicating him to stable his emotions. Allison finally finds Victor at the cabin and confesses that Reginald asked her to use her powers to convince Victor that he was ordinary. Victor lashes out, slicing Allison's neck with his power. Leonard takes Victor away and they leave Allison unconscious and bleeding. Like, I get that Victor was upset, but like... I don't know. Seems a little extreme.
What do you think? So Victor slashes Allison's throat as Allison says, I heard a rumor.
Oh, yeah.
Is Allison going to say, I like put Victor back under the spell? I heard a rumor you were ordinary. Is that what you think she's going to say? Like, is she going to neutralize, right?
Maybe I heard a rumor you listen to me or whatever, you come down. I don't know if she would say take away his power, but I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, now that I guess I had assumed that she was gonna do that again, but now I'm like wondering.
I don't think she would have though.
Yeah, now I'm
because she felt
reconsidering.
really bad about it, so I don't know why she would do it again.
Because it even could have been like, I heard a rumor you won't end the world or something, right? I don't know. It could be
But
something
I don't
else.
think she knew that he was going to be the cause at that point.
No, you're right, because they're still looking for Leonard or Harold at that point. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that till right now, right? But like, what was she going to be saying? Victor definitely assumes it's something that's going to take away his powers, right? That's why he lashes out. That's probably fair to assume?
Maybe he's just like upset. Because like, I guess like I kind of get it. Because like, he's just finding out he has powers. Everything basically from his childhood is like a lie. And it's like probably a lot to process. So maybe he was just like, I don't know. I feel like if there was a different way for him to find out that wasn't through Leonard. Like I wonder what happened if they had just found that journal right away and like one of the, I guess I don't know, because I don't know. Also, can we skip to 9?
I don't remember the order of events there. Does Allison tell Victor that I did that to you in that moment, or did Leonard tell her that and then Allison shows up and so Victor's mad at her?
No.
Because what's the order of events there?
Leonard like leaves.
I know he's gone.
Allison comes and then she's like, hey, Leonard's not a good guy. And Victor's like, Allison, you're just jealous. Like, shut up. And then Allison's like, and then Victor's like, also, I have powers now. And then Allison like remembers that she had to do that. And she's like, oh, so I remember when Dad made me do this to you. And then Victor gets mad.
Okay, because one thing we didn't mention is at the end of episode 6, the day that wasn't, Victor finds the notebook that Hargreaves left where Leonard had seen that he had manipulated her so that she forgot about her powers, right? But again, that timeline got wiped out, so she doesn't find that notebook.
Right.
And then Allison is the one who sort of opens it up to her.
Right. 9.
I want to talk a little bit about Alice. I don't know, because like, what do you think about Alice just as a character? What do you think about Alice and like how the show treats her? Because I feel like she has.
I don't like it.
Very little to do. Suddenly she has this sort of like romance that is weird with Luther. She's trying to have a relationship with Victor, but like that is struggling. That is sort of tentative because Allison finds Leonard in Victor's apartment at one point when she's not there, is very suspect about it. Victor won't hear it, right? And so like, I don't know, Allison feels on the outs of this whole thing, and then she gets her throat cut so she literally can't talk anymore. I don't know, it all feels pretty shitty to me. And I feel like she is the most interesting thing, right? Like, yeah, Luther's like this guy who wanted his dad to say that he loved him and he didn't, and Diego was upset because Luther was number 1 and like he struggled with the hierarchy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Allison's thing were like worrying. I think Allison and Klaus have the most interesting stories, right? Klaus's power has forced him to like medicate himself because he doesn't know how to deal with it. And then Allison is worried that her whole life is a lie because she has she earned everything or has she manipulated everyone? Like, I guess like, I feel like they don't give her enough, or we don't know enough about her. I don't know if you feel that same way.
Yeah, or like they like give her a lot all of a sudden where it just feels like not natural, I guess. And then like when Luther, let's skip to 9. Okay. When Luther like decides to lock Victor up, first of all, that was like rude of him, stupid. I think that the apocalypse is actually Luther's fault.
Oh, absolutely. Right, absolutely. So eventually everyone makes their way back to town. Harold dies. How does he die?
Oh, this is 9.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us what happens at 9.
Leonard takes Victor back to his home. He is riddled with guilt. Allison is rescued by her brothers, survives. She is unable to speak. Klaus tries to get high again, prompting Ben to punch Klaus in the face and revealing that Ben is able to make physical contact thanks to Klaus's powers. At Leonard's, Victor discovers Reginald's diary. After realizing Leonard's manipulation, he kills him in a fit of rage. Leonard's body is discovered by the siblings and 5 matches the glass eye to Leonard. Hazel arrives at the Umbrella Academy to volunteer to stop the apocalypse, but learns from 5 that with Jenkins dead, It's done. So they still don't know. Allison awakes and reveals that Victor has powers. Victor returns to the house. Luther incapacitates her before locking him in an isolation chamber. It's really hard to read this because I have to... Wikipedia should just fix it. The others protest, but Luther refuses to release him. Freaking rude.
Yeah.
Heartbroken and furious, Victor gives in his dark powers and breaks out. Yeah, so technically it was all Luther's fault. Like, what right does he have?
I mean, I guess I think this is the thing, right? Luther is so... I don't know, tell me if you agree with this. Like, Luther feels desperate to live up to the thing that their dad want, right? Like, even though he figured out that his dad literally sent him to the moon because he was, like, embarrassed of him, he still wants to feel like he's doing the right thing, right? He's still, like, he's number one. He has to do what his dad would have wanted, and his dad built this room to contain Victor, and, like, that's what he feels like he has to do, right? Like, it's driven by that. I feel like he's also... because...
He's also just mad because of Allison.
But but he also won't listen to her, right? Because she writes, like, she's not afraid of Victor. She writes on that, like, her piece of paper, like, don't lock him up. Like, that's not what we should be doing. And Victor won't let him out, and no one else.
Luther won't let him out.
Luther won't let him out, and, like, Diego and Klaus and Five won't challenge him on that. Yeah. So yeah, I think Luther bears a lot of the blame here, right? This show is about, like, kids bearing the cost for, like, the way that their parents raised him, and I think Luther's a really good example of that, right? I don't know. Do you feel like it's just because of Allison, or do you think, like, there's something more there?
I think he just thinks that he's, like, the one who, like, gets to make all the decisions, and it's just like, you're not. Just, like, it's also like, who decided to make him number one? The fact that he was, like, number one, like, I'm sure that, like, if it was going to be measured by power, he would not be number one because he's just, like, strong.
That's what I'm saying. Does it say why they got the numbers that they did?
No.
It's not like an oldest thing, right? They were all born at exactly the same time. So, like, I guess I didn't even think about that.
It's not like a rank thing. So, like, he literally has no right.
Do they say that in season 2? Do they explain why they have the numbers that they do?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I don't think so. Or else I think I would have remembered.
Because that would be interesting. Yeah, that now, because I literally hadn't thought about that till right now, right? But that we see the importance of that to him. We see the importance of that to Diego. And I guess, yeah, now I'm wondering, why do they have the numbers that they do? Yeah, I might have missed it, but I feel like the show does not explain that. Anyways, so at the end of 9 is when Victor blows up the containment chamber and gets out. Is that the end of 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And then so 10 is what? 10 is our last episode.
10, I feel like I've just been kind of skipping over the Hazel, Cha-Cha, and Ignis because I don't care. They're not even, like, relevant. They're like not in season 2.
Yeah.
So therefore,
oh, they're
relevant.
not?
Well, like, Hazel is in it for a second.
Okay.
That's all.
Because Hazel and Agnes escape. No, Hazel dies in 10. Cha-Cha kills him, I think, right?
No.
No? All right. No. I'm misremembering. Because there's like
it doesn't really matter.
There's a scene
Cha-Cha's,
with,
like, dead.
There's a scene with the handler, like the woman from the commission, Cha-Cha, Hazel, in this hotel room where they're kind of talking about how they have failed on this mission.
But basically, they're not really important. The Solis escape as Victor destroys the mansion. Ben is able to physically interact, saving Diego from falling debris. Victor confronts Pogo, who admits his knowledge of Victor's powers. He kills Pogo. Grace is destroyed when the building collapses.
Brutal. He impales
oof.
Pogo, like, on a pair of antlers or something. Like, it's brutal. There's some brutal stuff in the show. Like, there's a season episode 2 when Hazel and Cha-Cha torture that mechanic and they're, like, electrocuting him. Like, there are moments in the show when it is very gory.
Yeah.
Some of the violence can be very bloodless, but it can get very gory in certain scenes. Yeah. So
the siblings go to the concert hall where Victor is going to be performing to, like, stop him, and they fail to stop Victor. And the commission soldiers enter the theater because they're trying to protect Victor because they just want the apocalypse to carry on like planned.
Yep.
Ben manifests physically through Klaus and uses his powers to defeat the gunman. Allison incapacitates Victor as his accumulated energy is redirected into space and destroys the moon. Fragments begin to rain down upon the world, causing the apocalypse. Having failed their mission, 5 suggests they use his abilities to all time travel back in time to stop the apocalypse as a team. As the world is consumed, Hazel and Agnes escape and the Umbrella Academy transports back in time just before the apocalypse can kill them.
Very convenient. I was a little annoyed how convenient that was. That 5 was like, oh, hey, let's time travel real quick.
Yeah. Like, why did they just do that earlier?
Yeah.
So, like, do you want to time travel back like a month maybe or something?
Yeah, it's pretty convenient. I don't know, like there is a season 2 now. I don't know how the comic book ends. That is a very like comic book ending, right? That feel like I imagine that's probably exactly how the comic book ends, where it's like we're gonna find out what happened literally next month when the next issue comes out. But it's like a little bit more frustrating when it's a TV show and like you're not sure, because like even I'm looking at this review right now and like they mentioned like, we don't know if they're going to get a season 2 yet, right? So when season 1 ended, they didn't know they were going to get a season 2. And like, that's a super frustrating way. Like, imagine if they don't get a season 2 and it's just like, oh, hey, I can take other people with me when I time travel. And it's like, great. We could have done this a long time ago then. Yeah. What? There's also this really weird scene at the beginning of this episode where we see young Hargreaves with his wife who is dying. Again, this is where we see that he's like coming on a boat to America, but like this, I don't know. Are we supposed to assume that violin is magic? Because that's the same violin he gave his wife. It was his wife's, but she died, right?
Yeah.
And then Victor saw it at one point and he like gave it to her, right? After he after he had Allison convince Victor that he didn't have powers anymore. That's when Victor takes up the violin. Are we supposed to assume that violin is special? It has powers or something, or do we just? I don't
think so.
No, okay.
It's just a violin.
But yeah, there's this weird like opening scene where like satellites are launching and like his wife dies and then he opens this like glass container and like this sparkly light goes up into the sky and it's like, is that her soul? Like what is going on
power?
here? I don't know. Maybe something for season 2. Yeah. I don't actually know if I have a ton to say about this ending, right? Because they're all like trying to stop her again. Yeah. The commission sends their agents again, but this is where we see Ben uses his tentacles, like, right? What? Klaus forces Ben to use his tentacles to stop them, right? That's kind of cool. Again, I've said it a few times, but like, this is, I don't know. What did you think about Victor literally like shooting the moon to pieces? Like, I was
just like, how convenient.
I like it in the sense that it's like ridiculous, right? Like someone blows up the moon, right? Like I like it in the sense that it is ridiculous and nonsensical, which sometimes I think the show could like sometimes use a little bit more of. There is like a talking chimpanzee for the whole show that just is never mentioned. Yeah, I think the show could have used a little bit more of that. I thought it was like, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen, right? Because they kind of seemed to have Victor contained there for a second. And you think do you remember the first time you saw it? Do you think Allison was going to shoot her? They're like distracting Victor. Allison shows up behind her with a gun.
I think she was thinking about it.
But instead she like fires it next to her ear, seemingly like that could destroy your hearing. I don't know if that's what we're supposed to assume. Like, did it ruin her hearing? Because Victor seems to like, I don't know. We don't exactly know how Victor's
but it doesn't,
powers
just
work.
so you know.
It doesn't destroy her? No? Oh.
No, it was pretty pointless. I think it was just to like distract. It was just to startle him.
Okay. And then he unleashes an energy bolt that goes out into outer space and blows up the moon. So then as the moon is sort of crashing down on Earth, 5 is like, yep, let's all try to time jump. And they all jump away to, we don't see where they jump away to, right?
Nope.
No, we don't. Okay.
You have to find that out.
We have to find that in season 2. What do you think about this as an ending, right? Without knowing that there's like more coming. What do you think about this as like a final episode?
It's a great cliffhanger.
It is a good cliffhanger.
I don't really care. Like, I feel like the Hazel Chacha thing, especially now that I know that they're not really relevant at all in season 2, it was just like, why were they giving them so much attention if it wasn't even like important in the end? Especially like Agnes, like why?
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you told me, but that is frustrating, right? Because they got like, we didn't say this, but Cha-Cha is played by Mary J. Blige, who's probably the most famous person, right? Like Elliot Page is top billed, right? When the credits show up, he's the first name, but like Mary J. Blige is probably the most famous person on the show. So why get this like super famous person to play a character that doesn't seem to matter? I don't know if it's like part of Five, and they're part of like the commission, which is part of Fives' backstory, but like they don't actually know Fives at all, right? They don't have any like personal history with him. So I don't know. That is a little bit frustrating because that would actually be a nice through line, right? Because Cha-Cha has reason to be mad at Hazel. Hazel has this other life that he wants to live. So to hear that it just drops is more than a little bit frustrating. We literally see Cha-Cha die, actually, now that I'm remembering, right? Because she's making a phone call to try to sort of, she doesn't have her time machine.
To the commission or whatever.
Yeah, she's trying to sort of get summoned away, but doesn't in time. So yeah, I think Cha-Cha, yeah, you're right. Cha-Cha is dead at the end, which, so little spoiler for season 2. So we don't see Cha-Cha, we just see Hazel in season 2. Is that correct? Or do we see?
Yeah, we see Hazel for 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's a little bit annoying. All right. What, like, I don't know. Does this make you, you've seen season 2, the whole thing already?
I remember I didn't like season 2 as much though.
Okay. Do you feel like you were excited to, like, after season 1 and then like when season 2 came out, like, oh, I want to know what happens, and then you maybe didn't end up liking it, but like initially were excited for it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I remember, this is probably spoiling it a little bit much, but I remember after season 2, I was like, I'm not really interested in season 3, but we're going to do a podcast on it, so I will. Okay.
I know a little bit about season 3 just from like looking at the names of so at some point we're going to read the comics for these, and looking at the name of the 3rd issue of the comics, which season 3 is based off of, I think it could actually be really interesting.
Do you know like the kind of premise or whatever?
Well, I think that the name of it gives it away, so I don't want to say it.
Tell me the name.
No, I don't want to say the name. You can look it up. All right, this episode has gone kind of long, so I think maybe we skip one-shots for today.
That's fair.
Let me pull up our outro right here, and then we're gonna sign off because we've been going for a while. It doesn't feel like that long though. I don't know. I like that. I enjoyed that conversation. I don't know about you. All right, so no one-shots for this week. But you can follow Angela on Goodreads if you search Angela Glowacki. You can follow me on Twitter if you search at JoeyGlowacki at Joey Glowacki. If you haven't yet, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast listening app. You can also get in touch with us via email by sending your feedback or questions to podcast@comicsly.com. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, on the Comicsly YouTube channel. There you can also find all past episodes of the show, as well as past streams from our Comicsly Plays Twitch channel and other great videos. The music you heard in this episode is the song Don't Ever Forget, I Don't Want to Say Goodbye by Meka Imperfect. You can find their music on Bandcamp and YouTube. There will be a link in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening. We're going to come back with something different next week, but we're also going to have season 2 of The Umbrella Academy in the next couple of weeks. Again, looking forward to season 3, so hope you'll join us for that episode and next week as well. Thank you all for being here. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.